we can get started. Thank you for everyone for joining. My name's Doug. I'm the customer success manager here at Meez. Been with the company for about 4 years, help onboard and train and give people the advice they need, passing between different types of clients of ours, restaurants, caterers, any type that comes through the door, just trying to help kind of get onboarded. And so this webinar series is really for you to kind of learn best practices with Meez and how to apply it to your business. And with me are my esteemed colleagues. Start with Sarah Hassler, Director of Customer Success.
I am the Director of Customer Success and Support here at Meez. And I am a former chef, a CIA grad, ran restaurants for years, worked my way up from the bottom to the top, and then started working in consulting, which was just crazy. All before I joined Meez a little over 3 years ago. It's been a wild transition, but I appreciate being able to speak the language, and I didn't have to hang up my knives like entirely and still got to change jobs. So happy to be here, happy to help. Sergio, on to you.
Hello. A lot of you might remember me. I've seen a couple people like Toby on here who worked with me when I was still in sales. I've been with me since we launched just a little over 4 years ago and have transitioned to customer success now with Sarah and Doug. I have a long career in restaurants, mostly in the kitchen, but I did work in front of house as a manager, as a server, as a bartender, and owned my own place for a while as well. So I think we're all here today to look at our numbers.
Right. Yeah, so really quick, we're just going to do the classic housekeeping points just for everyone who hasn't done this before. This is being recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording after we're done. You can chat your questions into the chat and let us know if you have any questions along the way. We'll try to answer them either through chat or on the call while we're talking through what we're going over. The point of today is really to understand now, once you have data in Meez, once you have your recipes and your costs are flowing, and you're setting up your menus to start seeing your overall menu costs, what can you do with this information? And both Sergio and Sarah have owned and operated restaurants that needed to do this, use this kind of information to make their restaurants function better. So they're going to come to us today with a lot of really helpful advice on not just how to get to this point, but just about what you can do with this and what we can accomplish with this information, because just having the information is not enough. We need some action items. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about menus and the analytics. We're going to talk about kind of how to spot your MVPs on your menu versus what's draining your menu and what to do in those cases. We're going to talk a little bit about R&D and how to use Meez to kind of optimize any adjustments you're making to your menu. And then how to operationalize. So how to actually make it part of your week-to-week, day-to-day life. So yeah, let's kick it off. And again, just ask your questions in the chat. If you haven't yet, send us some high temps for you today so we can all commiserate about our sweaty bodies.
Or bask one way or the other if you're on the West Coast like Nicole.
All right, let's kick it off.
Okay, so the point of everything that Doug just said, I think we've heard a lot of buzzwords around analytics and AI. That's like what everybody is talking about when it comes to data. And really the point of this conversation today is just to hit on the fact that you need to be looking at the analytics, looking at the data and turning it into action. Otherwise, there's no point in having all of the fancy tools. If you just have the fancy tools and they are collecting data, but you're not doing anything with it, you're wasting money. So data without action is a complete missed opportunity. You're leaving money on the table by not looking at this with your team, whether that's monthly, weekly, if you're aggressive. And what comes from that data is that this allows you to kind of have cross-functional accountability. So what that means is from the front of the house to the back of the house to back-end operations and finance teams and all of that, using the data to understand what's selling, what those sales are actually doing to the business numbers, like what's driving profit, where the margins are at, what your purchasing decisions are leading to, what your front of the house pushing X dish equates to on a either weekly or monthly basis. That allows for alignment and transparency from every point of your organization and every point of your business to come together and realize what's actually happening and then make a decision about what to do next in order to improve those metrics. So this is not about blame. This is not about, well, the front of the house only likes to sell X and I can't get them to stop doing that. But if they saw and had an understanding of their impact on the whole restaurant, everyone wants to be a part of something big and everyone wants to play their role and have an impact. This is a way for you to do that within your business, to get buy-in from all of the stakeholders within your business. And you have the information at your fingertips as long as you're set up and ready to go in meez. And the cadence of this is up to you, whether that's, again, weekly or monthly. For me, I would do this monthly, and we're going to talk about how you can make this happen. So you'll leave here today with a checklist. We're going to email everybody afterwards with a checklist on how to get this going. So you don't need to take a ton of notes. Just stay tuned for the ride here. So yes, Serge.
Like Sarah says, not taking action on these analytics, to me, it's kind of the difference of, we talk about theoretical costs a lot here in meez. Theoretical, we have control over that. We can do that on paper, on a computer, and that's what a tool like meez helps us do. And then we always want to know about theoretical versus actual. And actual, of course, is how we take that data, those analytics, and take action on it and investigate often. There's a lot of sleuthing that happens sometimes when you turn up weird analytics. We've had, in the 4 years now, and since we launched menus, we have groups that analyze their menus on a weekly or on a monthly basis, as Sarah was saying. A couple examples, without naming names, of course, but I can, tell you one situation where after an analytics review, their pizza cost was going through the roof. And anybody in the pizza business knows they like to keep it around, 15 to 18% is high food costs. They were looking at pizza costs at 34%, couldn't figure it out. Their most basic pizza, a margarita. And as they looked through it, they saw, seeing that high food cost, the basil was calling for 1 ounce of basil.
Wow.
We all know an ounce of basil is a lot. Your average bunch of basil weighs 2.5 ounces or so. So when somebody was writing the recipe quickly, it made sense. And they were putting the right amount of basil on the pizzas. They were putting only a couple of leaves, but they had written 1 ounce on the recipe. So of course it was giving a cost of 3 and change, half a bunch of basil, and that was throwing all their numbers off on pizza. So one review like that showed them, hey, this basil doesn't weigh that much, obviously. And then in other examples, we can have something looking way off, and where, if you were at our menu building webinar a couple weeks ago, we know that when we put in a menu item, it assumes the quantity of 1 each if we don't enter anything in. So a lot of times you're creating plate recipes, and that's your menu item is just 1 recipe that's assumed as 1 each. But I've seen a case where there was the 1 each was an ingredient. Soft serve mix, and they're pouring a few ounces of soft serve, but without any quantity. That was showing as 1 each, and since it's an ingredient, was adding the cost of a whole case of soft serve mix every time they sold a unit. Something like that, you should, you almost consider yourself lucky that it's something that glaring, because it shows that your restaurant is running like an 800% food cost, which everybody knows is not the case, and it, triggers action to look into what's going on there. But there are a lot more subtle things that can sneak past us that are actually happening. And as Sarah said, money's being left on the table or literally being thrown in the trash.
Beautiful. So let's get into, Serge, would you demo
Yep.
and get a white for me, please? Let's
course.
talk through what we think is the most powerful aspect of analytics. So first of all, to get here in meez, this is only really useful at all if you have a menu built. So Serge has got a beautiful menu here. This is the Make Spring menu. And this is complete with sell price and quantity sold. So pulling it in from the PMix, importing here, and every one of those menu items has recipes or ingredients attached that are fully costed. So this is very much like end game of meez. Like, you've built your recipes, you've costed your ingredients, and now you've built your menu. now what? So next, the now what is the analytics page.
Yep.
So to get here, Serge, how do you get to analytics?
So from your menu that's built out in the 3 dots up top here, when you click there, you're going to go right to analytics. This is also available from your side navigation bar. If you do it from the menu that you're in, it's going to take you to the analytics specifically of that menu, which you can select here from the filters. If you have multiple menus built in your account, you select the one that you're looking to get the analytics on. Otherwise, it's going to show you like you just saw that mess when I unclicked it, because that's every menu that I have in this account shown on the graph.
But kind of cool because it allows you to like look at 2 different menus. So if you want to see both food and wine on the same, like show me where I'm making the money and where I'm not relative to one another, you can do that, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so this first chart, menu insights and engineering, the dog and star chart. What does all of that mean?
So here, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Serge. Let's do it.
So there's basically 2 axes here for this chart. The quantity sold, and this is going to adjust based on the numbers that I've plugged into my menu. So here it's going as high as 8,000 because that's how many cookies I sold, probably with every side order. And again, it's going to adjust based on the numbers. If I have numbers showing 100, then this is going to auto adjust when I load this menu. And then the profit margin, the amount of dollars that we make off every dish here is what's showing across the bottom here. Again, adjusted based on what we put in. And then the 2 axes in the middle, these are our average lines, which are also going to self-adjust based on what's our high price, what's our low price. It's going to give us a mean so that then we know the items that go up and over, above and beyond the mean, the averages in either direction. And these are the quadrants matching up here.
Yes, beautiful. So the ideal spot on this chart is the top right quadrant, is the star. This is your high margin, which means you're making a decent amount of money and you sell the most of these. These are your stars on the menu. They're popular and they're putting money in the bank. They've got a great profit margin. So when you have stars, don't mess with them. So it's important to know what your stars are in order to like kind of leave them alone and let them drive themselves. And the work happens in the other 3 quadrants, right? So, Serge, what's a plow horse?
So a plow horse is an item that is selling well, but it's just not making you as much money as you would like. So here, our plow horse is our cookie. When we look on this menu, it's great that we're getting a side of a cookie sold with almost every one. It's got a great food cost at 5%. But we're just not making a ton of money because we're only charging $5 for it. So we're making 4 and change off every one of them. And it is definitely moving, but it's a plow horse. So how we would address that would be either by raising the price of the cookie or lowering the food cost of it so that we're making more on it. In this situation, I would say it's a plow horse that we are very glad to have. It's right. Doing what it needs to do. It's raising every check average by $5 every time somebody buys a cookie, regardless of what sandwich they're buying.
You're making $5 a cookie. I mean, I feel like that's really good. I'm not a baker, but
yeah, but it's not gonna show star on this chart because there are items that we're making $13, $14, $15 off based on the cost.
Right, but these are important questions that you're asking. Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, like my question would be like, so all the time we hear people talking about food cost percentage as the main driver of their menu, right? But in this graph, it's actually not, food cost isn't really showing up. I mean, it is in a sense that the profit margin is reflective of that, but really what it's telling you is just how much money you're making off of these dishes. If an item might have a 50% food cost, but still be a star, is that right?
Of course. Yeah, because you might have, this is the sandwich menu, but let's talk fine dining or, okay, let's talk early 90s fine dining. A Chateaubriand might be a $90 item on the menu, but it might be costing you $61 to put it on the plate.
Right.
That's still $29 that we're making off every one. So it's going to end up on this chart showing, and if we're selling them, then it's definitely going to be a star. It's paying the bills. And so that's the kind of thing where you say, great, that's great that our cookie's making so much money, but I'd rather make $29 times 10 and 4 and change times 20 even.
Sure.
right?
Right.
Push the Chateaubriand,
Right.
is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yes.
Got it.
So while there
Okay,
are items that are high food cost in percentage, you don't, as an old mentor chef of mine said, you don't put margin in the bank, you put money in the bank. So more important than the percentage of margin is how much money is that actually generating.
right.
Would there be an issue with having, I mean, I guess the issue would only be that a high food cost percentage means that, I mean, if there's a very like high labor that goes into it, that might be maybe a concern, but if not,
And then, yeah, we don't address labor. It's a totally different formula, of course, but you know that when you look at some of these and you look at an item that might be looking like it's a winner and you go, man, but there's so much labor involved in that item. And if it's right on the fence here, we probably should raise the price because we know that this is a 3-day process, whatever it might be. You know, there might be short
Right.
ribs raising 3 days ahead or anything like that. And you might want to look at that and say, you know, it's a good food cost, but we should do better because of the amount of labor going into it.
Right. Even knowing that, right, raising that price, you might drop in popularity, right? Like might drop in the sales quantity sold. So these are the kind of questions that you're asking, right? So like when it's a star, it's probably obvious that it stays a star and we don't ask a ton of questions. But the other 3 quadrants, so plow horse, the questions that you asked are like, is this doing the work? Like plow horses are named that because they literally are driving the business, right? They're doing the work. The questions that you want to ask are, could we improve this? Could it do better? And what would we do in order to make that happen? Serge, you said 2 things. You said either raise the price or lower the food cost. Maybe we don't want to change, you know, the flour that we're buying, or maybe we like the quality that we're at and we think that that's a driver in the popularity here. So we don't make a change because it is doing the job, right? Like we're getting $5 a cookie. I feel good about it.
Yeah.
So that's the plow horse. Let's talk puzzles, the bottom right-hand side.
So a puzzle, you set this item up for success, meaning you made a great dish with a great food cost. You're making good purchasing decisions. It's just not selling as well as you'd like it to. So how can we address the puzzles? We need to get the wait staff behind that, if that, or your counter staff, or whoever your sales staff is. How do you put tools in their hands? Do you tell them a story about that menu item? If you're in fine dining, do you want to tell them a story about the farm the chicken comes from and the chicken's name?
I always think of that episode of Portland.
Everybody usually thinks of that. Because in fine dining and in farm to table dining, it's always all about the story, or your marketing is, your sales needs to be. So also,
but what you're saying is that just because they make a decent amount of money, we just need to sell more, right? Like, so the puzzles are the ones that we need to push.
Yeah, we need to push them.
And we don't want to change the price on them necessarily because that's not gonna, that'll deviate them from being a puzzle potentially to being more
right. That's not your first step. Your first step is to get them selling. And if you can do that by shaving $1 off the sell price and not lose your margin, your target margin, if it still keeps it at a healthy 20% or whatever your magic number is, then that might work because that's going to help you sell more of them. Because again, if you sell 10 more units, but make a little bit less, that's still more money ultimately that you're going to put in the bank and generate from that item.
Have either of you ever, just in your times as chefs and owners, done like focused on menu sort of like layout and, you know, chalkboard layout and like call outs like that to make these changes?
Of course. Yep.
Right.
Highlighting, you know, what's at the top, what do people see, whether it's a printed menu or a chalkboard menu, which the sandwich menu very much is something that would appear on a chalkboard, how you highlighted, how you put, you know, whatever it might be. Tuesday is tuna sandwich day or whatever you want to highlight, you know, that is going to get people to check that item out, whatever it might be. So
I was just thinking that Sergio might be dating himself just a bit by only mentioning print and chalkboard, but digital menus do a great job of this, where you have opportunities like at a fast casual sandwich place, where you have an opportunity to highlight a dish, maybe on a secondary screen. You've got your menu here, and then if you've got a beautiful picture or something else that can showcase that, or maybe you're running a special on that tuna sandwich on Tuesdays and it's 10% off that day, and that shows up as a highlight on that digital menu board. That's also an opportunity. And then also social media pushes around those dishes can tend to help as well on the marketing side.
You know, just in general, For those who are thinking Taco Tuesdays is where to go, it's not. It's Tuna Tuesdays.
It's Tuna Tuesdays, guys.
Yeah.
It's the thing.
That's what's gonna save your restaurant.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I was actually thinking of those as digital chalkboards, Sarah. So I didn't think
You
those
were. Oh.
digital chalkboards is what I call it.
I always think back to the class at CIA where they're like everything was about middle of the menu, right hand side, just below the midline. That's your most popular spot on a fine dining menu. That tends to be the dish that sells the most. So you always wanted to put the puzzles in that spot. But I tested this over, I don't know, 10 or so years, and I don't know that actually rings true. But it is what they taught at CIA. So take that
Try
as
something new. Got it.
And
okay.
then we have the bottom left quadrant.
Dogs.
Did I just interrupt you, Doug? Sorry.
No, you're
No,
fine.
okay.
You're fine.
The bottom left quadrant, known as dogs, which is not my favorite, because I'm a big dog lover, but these are the items that aren't selling well and just aren't making us much profit. So we probably need to get these items off the menu, unless it's like a first pass at them the first time we ran this on the menu. How do we boost this? Can we make more money off a spinach and artichoke sandwich? How much can we realistically charge for that? You know,
So
which
this
ones
is
of
at the
these items?
bottom. This is in that spot because both the sales are low and even when we do sell it, we don't make any money.
Yeah.
So this quadrant is the one that I like to call, what are you doing?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
So, okay. I'm just curious, your spinach and artichoke as a dog, what's that one all the way over there to the left? Yeah.
This is the shake and bake.
What have
So
you
13
done? Why is
Dive
it so?
into this sandwich and take a look at it.
Yeah.
So we got a sandwich. Also, you might see as some of these, which if you were on 2 weeks ago when we did the webinar, your menu items can be a combination of recipes. And recipes can also be like your paper goods set, so you don't have to write over and over, fork, knife, napkin, and ingredients as well can be part of this. So now here we're going to look at that shake and bake sandwich and figure out where is that cost and is there a way to make this better? Can we improve it? There's sub recipes, there's cutlets. And we're looking at it and going, there might not be much that we can do here to lower the cost here or raise the price.
Right.
Can it take more of a price range? Which of course, anything I do on the price here, we set our price on the menu or actually in our POS, and that's what's driving our price here.
Right. So yeah, if you raise the price there in order to improve your margin, it doesn't look like there's much that you can do on the purchasing side, right? Like the ingredient costs are not super high, but if you raise the price, you're going to expect to see even lower sales, most likely,
Right.
on something that was already not popular. So that's probably going to stay a dog. So the dogs are not worth making decisions on, other than, and I don't mean that about actual dogs. Okay. I love the idea of this, but like thinking back to when I was an operator, I did not have time to click on every one of these little dots and make every one of these decisions. I have a very limited amount of time to obsess over what I could actually control. So please tell me, Sergio, what should I spend my time obsessing over? Should I click into every single one of these, or is there an alternative?
So this being a sandwich menu, we can probably quickly take a guess at one thing that is in common in all of these recipes, right? Bread. It's a sandwich menu. So then there's other items too. But as we scroll down our analytics here, we're going to have different metrics here. Popular. We can usually see that pretty quickly from the numbers. These are just straight up bar graphs.
That cookie is killing it.
But this ingredient usage by percent of sales metric, we love this because this is really doing a lot of the investigative work for us. This is looking at that entire menu and showing us at the top here, what are the items that are impacting our profit, our sales, and our revenue the most. And percent of sales, this beef tri-tip is already up at 1.5% of our sales is driven by this. And these numbers might seem really low, but it's a big menu. There's a lot of stuff selling here. And so across what's selling, then the other items that we have, as I said, is, your ciabatta, your sub rolls, your bread rolls, which are on every single sandwich. And so those become the items that we really want to make sure we're inventorying them, make sure we're never losing a piece of tri-tip. This is really what's driving our food costs. We're not going to
Right.
chase around after and obsess over, how are these products doing? And when was the last time we counted the onion powder that is barely moving the needle on stuff? Of course, we don't want to waste anything, but like Sarah said, your time is limited. You need to focus on the items that are really impacting your food costs and moving the needle, and maybe narrowing this down to like your top 10 items, incentivizing your line cooks to maximize the use of that, to prep exactly what's needed. Whoever's ordering to never over order on the ciabatta, the sub rolls, so they don't get stale, and you're using fresh product all the time, cycling through it and making sure you never lose a ciabatta or a sub roll.
And as we've mentioned on previous webinars, this is the hit list for you to be talking to your vendors about. So if you're getting that ciabatta from a local bakery, that's fantastic. If you could drop that price by 5 cents a roll, that probably won't have a huge margin of effect on the bakery itself, but that 5 cents per roll to your business is crucial, right? So where are those negotiations that you can make with your purveyors? The only ones that really you should care about, maybe leave the spices behind. That's okay. But the ones that you should care about is the top of this list. The ones that are in red, maybe some of the yellow, that's where to put your energy and your focus when making purchasing decisions. And also, as Sergio mentioned, operational decisions about what gets wasted and what do we really care about.
And I see, Arusha, you have your hand raised. I think I have to stop sharing to call on you.
Be able to give speaking access for Arusha.
Yeah.
Oh, happened by mistake.
No worries.
Oh,
All good.
no worries.
Okay. So none of this actually matters unless we have accurate recipe data, which is just one
Correct.
point that we need to make here.
Yes. And something that I talk to a lot of people about. It's most of my work with the people on this call and others is really around getting you set up and getting all the information into meez. So Sergio, if you want to scroll back up or go back to the menu itself, if you haven't seen the previous webinar from 2 weeks ago about building a menu, highly recommend it. We walk through how to build a menu itself and those steps to take. So it's all laid out for you there. We have a lot of resources around this, but just so you're, it's all very clear. The work that goes into this is really about recipe accuracy and making sure that what's in the program is a reflection of that theoretical world we have for our restaurant, right? We want this, what we're looking at in front of us, this sandwich, to be a reflection of an ideal state, and we should be able to get there, in our kitchens. Sometimes there's variables that we're not gonna be able to account for or that we have to manage, but none of that data works unless we are able to accurately put together a recipe like this and cost these items and make sure these items are the items that we assume they are. So I see EVOO in here. A lot of times I'll see someone enter an olive oil into their recipes, and then I'll look in their ingredient list and there's 4 different olive oils, all with relatively the same name. Sometimes people put in the brand because their brand is what they like, how to identify, the drizzling olive oil that's on the pass or versus, the, sauteing olive oil. But clicking on that EVOO or maybe on the drop down in the purchase, you could also show Sergio, will show you what costing information lives in there. So what vendor you're getting it from, what ID number, what the price is, what the pack size is. And you can very quickly understand, okay, maybe you put in EVO thinking it was one item, but it's actually linked to another item. And something I think it's really helpful to just go over with everybody is what I talk to a lot of people about, which is just ingredient hygiene, which is making sure that if you click into, let's say, click edit for me, Sergio, and you click on EVOO and you type in olive oil on the left-hand side. Nope.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you click on EVO, you'll see there's going to be a drop down of different oils, different olive oils, different items that you'll be able to pick from. And you'll want to just keep an eye on this list because this is all the different data you're bringing in from either your invoices or from R365 if you're using that, or from spreadsheets that you're uploading. And just keep in mind that meez is only as good as the data that you're kind of entering in. So I really highly recommend going, focusing a lot on your ingredient list and really keeping a close eye on it, because everything else flows a lot easier in meez when you have a really good handle on that. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call that I've spoken with can attest to that. That's true.
So what happens when you have too many? Like, what do I do?
Yeah. So really helpful tools we have for this. So if you click done for me, Serge, and you head back to the home screen, one thing that I'll always do actually is keep my recipe open on one tab and then use this tab. If I click search, just click the search bar for me, Serge, and then type in, oil, sugar, oil, salt, all these like
The usual suspects. Yeah.
all these usual suspects. And if you click on the ingredients, you might see, all right, here we go. We got to have a bunch of different options here that we probably need to merge together. And fortunately, our captain and CEO, Josh, who built this, knew this was going to happen from the beginning and built the merge function in here. So if you just click those two checkboxes and click that, as soon as you click two or more checkboxes, you can click that merge button. I guarantee a lot of people on this call have already done this because it is extremely helpful. As soon as you click which item you want to merge to, all those recipes, the 20, 32, and 9 recipes will all point to one page with the costs, the accurate cost that you want. All the recipes will be cleaned up and not pointing to some, kind of other ingredient that you don't need in there.
Yeah. Before I merge them, I also wanted to point out one big reason to do this too is that when this happens, oftentimes you'll end up with one of these items not showing a cost. Maybe the cost was mapped to one of them, but not the other. And you're looking at recipes going, I know we bought olive oil. Why aren't these 32 recipes showing a cost for olive oil? So as soon as we do what Doug is describing, which when we select multiple ingredients, we get that merge button. We select whichever one. They're both called the same. So we just want to merge them. And now those 32 recipes that did not have a cost will be merged. I'm only a viewer on some of these, which is why I'm not getting that. So if you're a viewer.
One other quick tip I can give you is, let's say you want to click on that olive oil one with 9 recipes. Let's say this is an olive oil that's a specific brand, because you could see the recipes on. If you click that recipes on tab, you can see what recipes are on it. Maybe that this is actually a brand that you want to make sure is kind of designated as a separate item. You can click that edit button there and actually just type in the name and just change the name right here to whatever you'd like to call it. Beautiful Sergio with his boutique product knowledge coming in.
I was just gonna write Bob's olive oil from Bob's distribution.
I just Bob's distribution. Bob's carries Frantoia though.
Good old Bob's olive oil, straight from Italy. So that's a great tool as well. I'd say the merging and the ingredient renaming are going to be two really helpful tools to continue to manage your ingredient list, keep things clean, and by doing that, you're setting yourself up for an easier time with your menus, because all of the foundational work is done.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And olive oil is a great example. I've mentioned this to a lot of people, even extra virgin olive oil. You get into some restaurants that buy 4 different extra virgin olive oils. One's for finishing seafood, one's for vegetables. And if you keep them as one ingredient, then of course you're only going to show the last cost paid for each one. So I always point that out to people. Keep those separate. That way you know that the drizzle of this Ligurian olive oil costs you a lot more than the drizzle of Bob's olive oil.
I have to tell you that in my wildest dreams, when I thought about my career, I never thought we would spend time discussing ingredient hygiene as a topic. And yet, very important. Doug, super passionately on a soapbox about it. Love it. Love it.
This is theoretical ingredient hygiene. Actual ingredient hygiene is when you're scrubbing chanterelles with a toothbrush.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Those things I can kind of separate. Okay. So understanding that the better your recipes are, the cleaner your ingredient list is, the better your recipes are. Recipes must have a yield to properly cost. That's going to lead to great menu costing, which then allows you to really use these powerful analytics as we are discussing. So Serge, do you want to get into LTO R&D life cycles? I'm not sure.
Yep. What was that, Sarah?
I'm not sure who's on the call. So like, is this relevant to, do we have any large groups who want to see maybe an approvals process or how to operationalize that?
We do have one hand up from Makinda. We want to invite Makinda to speak. Unless it was an accident, McKinnon. You can tell us.
Yeah.
But I can't grant it.
I don't see it, so.
Is it only you, Sergio?
There we go.
Oh,
I
there we
got
go.
you. There you go, McKinda. If you had a question. You are on mute, though.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hello?
Yes, now I hear you.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My question, I'm requesting to get a recording of this discussion. Is it possible?
Yep. We will be emailing it to everybody on the call afterwards.
Thank you.
You got it.
Then we have another question from AJ. Is there any way to be able to stretch the graph to make the bunched up items more easily visible? Funny you should mention that, AJ. Sergio was just discovering this minutes before our call. Let's show AJ how to do it.
So when you first are looking at any of these metrics, when you hover over the top right, you will see the little
Sergio, share your
bars.
screen.
Actually, I'm
goodness.
gonna do it.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is that same ingredient usage by percent of sales. And my screen's a little bit bigger than Serge's, so you can kind of see some of it, but you can also, you can, as Serge is talking about, like resize these. But if you know we're looking at the same location, then just hide this column. And you can just click on that little down arrow. And now I can see pretty much everything that's there. Yeah, great. And you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do there. But that keeps this nice and clean so that as I'm scrolling through, I can immediately see ciabatta versus sub roll and all these down here that we care a little less about, Oaxacan cheese, napkin, things like that. Hopefully that helps. I know there was one other.
I like to, on that topic real quick. Do you want to show, if you hover over the three dots on the, like if you hover over the graph, you get those three dots there. You can always export this data if it feels cumbersome and you want to have it in Excel. You can just click that three dots and click export.
That's actually what we're doing next. So let me minimize this. So I did two things here and I just want to highlight this. One, I clicked these two arrows and that maximizes this. So that takes up my whole screen now. And then I hid some columns that were extraneous. As Doug is saying, you can also export to CSV or Excel or PDF if you want to be fancy. If you want to take that to a meeting, that can be very helpful. If you want to print things, especially.
And the same goes for the dog star chart, AJ. If you you can export, probably would make the most sense for you to export that if it's really bunched up and you're not seeing the data the way you want to. Exporting that will be a really helpful chart for you to look through.
Great segue, Doug. So that's actually next. How to export, especially this dog and star chart, because okay, this is useful as a visualization. And if we want to like make decisions from this, that's all fine and dandy. But if you want to take it to a meeting and kind of color code this and play with it on your own, we recommend going to the three dots. So make sure you're filtered for the menu that you want to be on, and you'll see that filter reflected here under the filters. So you can see the menu that I'm in is Make Spring Menu 2025. And then I'm going to go three dots here, export to CSV. That will download it for me. I already have this one downloaded over here. So you're going to get something that looks like this. It's horrible. I know. Stay with me. So I'm going to highlight everything in here, this entire chart. And then I'm going to say, we're going to make a quick pivot table. And there is no quiz on this afterwards. So I'm going to click on Insert, then Pivot Table. I want this on a new worksheet. And you can do this in Google Sheets or Excel, whichever you like. And then choose how you want to organize this. So things I care about. I want to know what the menu item name is. Tell me the total revenue that I made. Tell me how much money it cost me and what the food cost percentage was. So that kind of starts to organize some of these things. And then just to go one step further, I'm going to change some of these values to show as currency. So I'm going to change the number format on a couple of these. So I can see the total revenue in actual dollars.
We are sending recording after this. So
yes,
if your eyes are crossed like mine are, do not watch
don't
this.
be scared. So
Pivot.
I want the average of the food cost rather than the sum, and I can change that here in the number format section as well. And then I want that in percentage. Okay, so now it's relatively clean. But the things that I care about are maybe, and this is really up to you and your team. What is driving your decisions? Is it the amount of revenue? Is it the total cost? Is it the profit margin, which I left out of here, but we can put in here. Let's see what that looks like. Currency, beautiful. Okay, so depending upon what really matters here, let's say it's food cost. You're making your decisions based on food cost percentage. I'm going to conditionally format this one column, and I'll say if it is greater than, for this one, we'll say 22% food cost, then highlight with red. And
Okay.
now I took this big list, thankfully not a huge menu, and I really only have a few things to take a look at and really like work on. So chicken and chorizo is at 27.95% food cost. This one down here, shake and bake, we know that's a dog. It's costing us a lot of money. We've already kind of made that decision. That one probably has to go. But even there might be something here to do with your Italian meats and provolone, because your food cost again is above that target. And I'm just highlighting those things so that the rest I can kind of ignore in this moment. But
Yeah.
you can decide how you want to manipulate this data and then save it, use this week over week or month over month. Now you have a record, you can track variance and all sorts of other fancy things that I'm not going to get into.
So we've helped a lot of customers do this, and it's a really, really valuable deliverable to your bosses, your leadership team, whoever kind of needs to see this information. And it's not always that easy to see it when you have 100 menu items. Once this webinar is over, you'll get the recording of this. And I think we have a template that we're going to send out to everybody afterwards as well of this pivot table. This will be a huge asset for you to be able to export your data from Meez, kind of copy and paste it into a pivot table you already have created, and it will generate this really easy to follow data set that you can pass along to your team and really analyze this stuff. And yes, even I can pivot table now, which I was never have thought I could.
Cool.
So yeah, so just keep that in mind. This is a really, really valuable thing that you can pull together out of this data.
Yeah. Now, Mingjui, I don't want to mess your name up, Mingjui. You had a question about menu engineering, of course, should consider line cook prep time as well. That is part of the equation that we don't have here at Meez, but as I said and touched on before, absolutely. We are looking at raw food costs. What you're referring to, of course, is what you call the prime cost with your labor factored in. And that is something that, of course, you have a high labor item that's showing you that it's a great food cost. You may want to be considering that one as maybe possibly to make the price higher. You want to extend the margin on that because you know there's a high labor cost happening there. And when you're referring to weighted contribution margin more helpful than the contribution margin, 100% agree. And the Meez menus feature does show that based on your sales volume is going to change how that item contributes to your menu. So when I was first showing the cookies, if all I sold was cookies at a 5% food cost, that's of course going to improve my overall menu cost because it is weighted by the volume of sales there. Says here, you use your labor costs from your QSR and KDS, use to calculate line cook labor cost. I get it, of course.
If I were you, I would take the two and put them together and combine the two from two different Excel tables and do a pivot table over that. If you really wanted to see the total of everything, take your labor cost, add it to your food cost dish by dish, if that is how it is broken out for in your KDS. Use that to make better decisions. Absolutely. Okay. I think I skipped ahead just because we were on it.
Yeah. Well, we're at 3:48. We just want to jump into operationalizing.
Definitely.
Advice on that.
So creating recurring review sessions with your team is key here. what you're reviewing and what items you're showing and who's at these meetings when you review them, of course. Everybody has a little bit of a hand in this when you're talking about how we're viewing these analytics. Sorry, let me get my screen back on here. So when you're doing a menu review meeting, whether you're showing the pivot table or you're looking at something like this, then we know, who is coming to the meeting. Culinary team, they deal with the recipes. They are dealing with the physical product, the real world. They are the ones who can say and speak to it and say, there's no way that steak and salsa is, if the food cost looks off of it, they can answer those questions on the call and say, why is this item looking so high? And jump on and look at the recipes and say, this is, where it needs to be. Now, your finance team, they have a big hand in purchasing, of course, and they're probably going to be the ones really scrutinizing the numbers and looking at your overall menu performance and say, this is a good number versus 28%, not a great number. But they're going to be able to understand as the whole meeting is collaborated upon, culinary, finance, operations. Often that can be who's doing the actual purchasing, who calls in the orders, who picks between Cisco, Baldor, Chef's Warehouse, who's constantly has that information in front of them. Also items that we can find in meez. If you are a meez user, our own invoice scanning process has a dashboard where you can compare all the different arugula that you buy from different vendors, who consistently has the better price. So that's your ops team weighing in. Your training team, they use the meez recipes to train new cooks. That has a huge impact on your food costs, of course. If you have a new cook who just doesn't get it and 9 out of 10 dishes that he makes aren't leaving the pass because they're not up to snuff, you got to get your trainers on board. How can they better use the meez recipes to train cooks so that they're up to speed faster and every one of their plates in the pass is landing at the table, making your customers happy? Regular reviews are important, of course, and regular reviews that are annotated. What did we change? What has changed? What's working? Did we improve? Hey, we made a big change and we put all of our eggs in this basket with a vendor who really was courting us for our business. Is that working? You always want to keep an eye on that because that vendor that worked hard for your business, they drop their prices probably a little too low on a few things and they're slowly going to start trying to make that back up. So that's why the regularity of it is super important. Not once a year, once a quarter, better than once a year, but a lot of things can change in 3 months, as we all know, like the temperature.
Okay, so
Overnight.
we're going to open the floor for questions, which I know we've kind of been answering as we go, but if anybody else has other questions, otherwise we're getting into rapid fire tips on how to actually make this happen. Because again, we understand how busy you are, though I do think that the busier you are, the more you need this. Tends to be the case. For me, calendar nudges help. Just connecting it to my calendar and setting maybe a 10-minute block or a half-hour block once a week or on every Monday or whatever works, to be reviewing this and make sure I have the latest PMix from last week is in here. I've exported, I've got what I need. I can now make decisions and answer to the higher ups should I need to. One tip. What do you guys got? We have a list.
Yeah. So rapid fire tips we're into.
Yes.
Connect your menu items to cost. Remind yourself that an unchecked menu is leaking money. So make sure that your items, your ingredients, pieces are linked to cost there.
Beautiful. You're muted, Doug.
All right.
Okay.
The big one for me, I think, is meeting with your team about this. I mean, this does not work unless everyone's on the same page and going in the same direction. You have different people ordering, you have different people opening and closing, watching over the line. You have to get everybody on board, understanding where the money is going right now, where it needs to go, what dishes are doing what. Without transparency and accountability and ownership of these items, you're going to be going in circles. So I think that's the biggest thing we've seen from really successful clients of ours is they tend to have a leadership team that's all pretty much working together in this. It's not just one person managing meez and then going off and trying to convince their team to listen. It's, everybody's bought in.
Beautiful. One other way, maybe the calendar, you just end up ignoring it after a while. You could trigger this alongside your POS reports. So when you get that sales report from your POS, or let's say, Minghu, you get your labor costs from the KDS, at that time, that's the moment that you pull or do inputs for your menu and pull your analytics report so that you have them side by side, ready to review.
Assigning ownership of different parts of your menu of different action items to different team members, giving sous chefs, maybe one sous chef is going to be responsible for monitoring the meats and proteins and dairy, and another sous chef is going to monitor any produce. And you can really get into giving people a job and an ownership too, which is going to get people more involved, incentivize it maybe. Hey, if we see a couple points drop off the protein purchase and you're the guy that calls in the orders and makes decisions on these, there's X Amazon gift card or dinner at your favorite restaurant nearby that isn't this one, etc. So another important piece there, good rapid fire tip.
I'm also, unsurprisingly, a big fan of color coding. So in that pivot table, if you do decide to do conditional formatting and assign things that are red, meaning these are the items that we want to rethink. And maybe if you have certain food cost percentages or revenue targets that are above or below a certain threshold, those are green. Like green is beautiful, red, maybe we need to work on those so that you have a focused list to work toward. Any other questions at this time? Because I think we can wrap as we dwindle through this. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As Doug mentioned, we are recording, all of our webinars are recorded. You can see previous recordings both in our community and at the link that I shared in the chat. We will be sending out a checklist of how to create this recurring review with your own team. So you'll get that along with the recording after probably tomorrow in your email box. So check your inbox for that. And yeah.
So then.
Excellent.